Well, it looks like interest rates are about to go up again.
The odds of another interest rate hike went up today.
No, wait, sorry. What I actually meant to say was that interest rates are going to actually come down.
We could be looking at some rate cuts.
No, wait. What I actually meant to say was that interest rates are going to stay high and flat for a long time to come.
We're using this pause to assess whether we've increased interest rates enough to bring inflation back to target.
Believe it or not, these three different prophecies, so to speak, have a lot more in common with each other than most people would originally think. I want you to imagine for a second that there's a kid sitting on his bike at the top of a very large hill, and he intends to bike down that hill and up the side of another large hill. But of course, he won't have enough energy to get up to the top of that hill, and so once he loses momentum, he'll start coming right back down. Now, halfway through this kid's journey, when he's up the other side of the hill and he's near the apex of his climb, he starts to run out of momentum. And three different observers are watching him do this. The first observer says, wow, he still has a little higher to go before he runs out of momentum. The second observer says, no, he's already run out of momentum and he'll start falling down anytime. And the third observer says, actually, he's running out of momentum, but it's going to take him a while before he fully stalls out and starts to come back down. Now, at first, it might seem like these three observers all disagree with one another, and I guess to some extent they do. But what they all have in common is that they all agree that at some point that kid is coming right back down that hill. Right now, that's exactly what's happening with people in the financial sector. You've got one group of people that says, hey, look, there's still persistent inflation. In order to properly combat inflation, another rate hike is absolutely needed. But then another group of people says, hey, look, while inflation is still technically there, the recessionary pressures are absolutely growing and they're ever present. And as a result, the Bank of Canada actually should do nothing at all. Because if they do more, there is no chance that Canada has a soft landing and Canada's economy is going to come crashing down in the next couple of years. And then you have that third category that says the Bank of Canada has already gone too far and they're going to have to start reducing it sooner than later to combat all of the recessionary pressures that have now built up in the Canadian economy. Now, is it possible that rates could continue to go up? Of course it's possible, but it's far more probable that the Bank of Canada is going to decrease rates at some point. It is true that Canada is still dealing with some persistent inflation, but it's also true that Canada is one of the few advanced countries in the whole entire world that is yet to recover back to its pre-pandemic level of per capita GDP. I mean, technically Canada is not in a recession yet, but if you look at the Canadian GDP relative to its population, so GDP per capita, we've actually been falling for the last 12 months. In other words, Canada would have been in a recession some time ago if it wasn't for the significant immigration that flooded into our country, bringing its dollars with them. And since Canada can't keep at this level of immigration forever, it's only a matter of time before we enter into that technical recession.
I do it for the kids.
I think we'll likely see us enter into that technical recession sometime next month in October, because when the third quarter results come out, it's likely to be another contraction of the Canadian GDP, meaning we'll now hit that threshold to meet the requirements of being considered a recession. That's what makes the governor of the Bank of Canada's job so difficult right now, and also why it makes it so hard to predict what he's going to do. By Tiff Macklem's own acknowledgement, the mortgage interest costs, which have gone up more than 30% in the last year, are the single largest contributing factor now to headline inflation, meaning each and every future rate increase that the Bank of Canada decides to do is only going to go and make that factor worse. And yet, you cannot call it a win when you have one of the largest increases of rates in the history of Canada and you still end up with inflation that's at or above your upper band. So what do you do if you're the Bank of Canada and really the only tool that you have is this big hammer that we call interest rates within which you can hit the economy with? Well, they actually have a second tool, and that is social media and the media. A couple years ago, when the Bank of Canada was saying that it wasn't going to raise interest rates until sometime in 2023 and 2024, and I was saying actually that's probably not true, they're probably going to raise rates in 2022 and it's going to be a rapid rise of rates, although they rose it much faster than even I thought they would back then. I was saying back then that just because the Bank of Canada is saying one thing doesn't actually mean that that thing is going to happen. And it also doesn't mean that they actually believe that thing within which they're saying. Anytime that the Bank of Canada comes out with a public report or comes up with an announcement that they make public, the media takes it and they write an article based on their interpretation of it. Social media people come on and they make videos commenting about what they think the Bank of Canada is going to do. People hear this information and they make their own interpretations of the data and the information that they're hearing as well. Meaning that anytime the Bank of Canada speaks, there is an effect that ripples across the market, even though nothing has actually happened yet. So when you hear the Bank of Canada come out and say that interest rates are going to stay high for a long period of time, or that interest rates are going to see even maybe one more increase before the end of the year, is it possible? Yes, it definitely is. But the intent there, whether that's true or not, is to have people spend less money. And I'm assuming that the hope is that people will hear this, spend less money, and have inflation come down so that it hits that 2% mark that they're hoping for. Because truth be told, if the inflation comes in above 3% again, they'll likely have to do at least one more rate increase in either the October or December meeting, despite the fact that in doing so, they're hurting the economy more. They need to make sure that inflation is dead.
Why, you little... I got you!
Stop! He's already dead.
Canada is at an inflection point right now. Historically speaking, the interest rates that we're experiencing aren't even all that high. In fact, if you go back far enough, they're relatively average. The problem is that we haven't seen these interest rates for about 20 years, meaning that we're dealing with an entire generation of people that have never had to experience rates this high. For them, this is shocking. And for those that have been around long enough that have experienced this before, many are remembering now why they hated it so much. Historically speaking, when you're looking at the upward trend of a rate cycle, rates usually flatten out for about 6 to 8 months before they start trending downward. The problem is that we've already had a pause of about 6 to 8 months previous before the Bank of Canada decided to start increasing the interest rates again in order to tackle inflation that was far more persistent than they thought it would be. So maybe this time around we'll be in an environment where it happens sooner or maybe even later than that 6 to 8 month time frame. There's just not enough historical information based on what's happened recently to actually be able to gauge that. If I had my guess though, that 6 to 8 month time frame where the rates are paused following the last rate hike, I think that's still going to hold true. Because the Bank of Canada isn't going to want to bring the rate down too fast and potentially risk bringing back inflation, but I also don't think that they're going to be able to wait all that long either, given just how much recessionary pressures are starting to hit the market. Right now, the Bank of Canada's overnight lending rate sits at 5%. And my guess is that within a year, you're going to see at minimum a 25 basis point drop. Within 2 years from now, some analysts are saying that the Bank of Canada is going to drop their rate to somewhere in the neighborhood of 3.75%. Within 3 years, 3.25%. And by the start of that 4th year, somewhere around 3%. Now, is that meant to be taken as gospel that you should plan your whole life around? Hell no. Because after all, we do have an election coming and who knows what kind of havoc that's going to wreak. If you've gotten this far, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell notification so that you're alerted when new videos come out.